Overwatch is one of the most successful IPs of all time. Whether you love or hate it, the results it has seen over the years are undeniable. The Overwatch experience varies from player to player, and yet it plays like something that is truly impossible to find anywhere else. Overwatch 2 tripled the membership of its Game of the Year predecessor in its first month, and yet, does the game feel a bit dead? So what were the expectations with Overwatch 2? New content, new balancing that made the game feel more fluid and allowing more heroes to be viable. A fresh feel to an IP that was loved by many and truly difficult to replicate, as the many failed Overwatch clones with arguably better balance began to simply fall to irrelevancy. All the while, the titan that was Overwatch 1 stood strong. Seriously, a titan. Overwatch 1 was Game of the Year and had over 50 million users by 2019. However, 2019 would be roughly the point where that game would start to see an extreme decline due to some poor decisions in game balance. Brigida had been full swing, no pun intended at this point, and absolutely ruining the experience of Overwatch at the top 30% of the game, giving the rise to the dreaded GOATS meta, a meta which involved 0 DPSs, 3 tanks, and 3 supports. From there, we also saw our introduction of Role Queue, which then introduced Sigma and created the double shield meta, yet another meta where most DPSs simply felt unplayable, driving more and more players from the game, which, when combined with the fact that people now had to queue for specific roles, started skyrocketing the queue times, and we still feel the effects of that even now. The game continued on its path of poor balancing, and the various issues that Blizzard went through during the COVID era between lawsuits and, well, COVID just amplified these issues as the player base became more and more alienated, and the new heroes and content just outright stopped. So we were ready for something different. What we ended up getting was a game that had a ton of new balancing changes, 3 new heroes, and unfortunately the most horrible server problems imaginable at launch. Every single screen was the connecting screen as Blizzard faced DDoS attacks designed to injure the launch of Overwatch 2, and yet it persevered, as some of the biggest names in gaming all flocked to play and grind Overwatch 2. It is pretty difficult to calculate how much damage the early server problems did to the game, but it was overall minimal in the grand scheme of things, as Blizzard revealed a month later that it already had 35 million players. To go along with this, Overwatch 2 was pulling in 185,000 average viewers for the entire month of September. And this is usually how massive mainstay AAA games start off, as we've seen with titles such as Valorant or Warzone, before they end up decaying down a bit to more realistic and steady levels. But with Overwatch 2, the viewership has not just decayed, it has straight up spiked. November's Twitch viewership was down to just 33,000, with December on track to do even worse before the Season 2 launch. And YouTube views have also seen a significant decrease compared to the launch, where it almost felt easy to get a quick couple million views with Overwatch 2 content. So what happened? Is it over? Is Overwatch 2 dying? Well, no, not yet, and not for this viewership reason. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today. Overwatch 2 really thrives in the player experience, which has been set back pretty harshly so far into the game. We still have characters that are completely unplayable and oftentimes result in getting harassed simply for selecting them. Some great examples being Doomfist in Season 1 and Mercy especially. But the problem is, there is nowhere else you can truly experience Doom or Mercy style gameplay. No shooter out there even comes close, which is why the base of these two characters are so dedicated, and this goes to many more than just these two. They simply love the style and are willing to push through all of the adversity to continue enjoying it. And we all have our favorite heroes as well, and I speak for most OW enjoyers when I say there's nothing that really scratches the same itch that Overwatch does, which really presents an issue, since the better you get at Overwatch, the more rigid the game becomes, especially when there is an oppressive meta that is in place, such as GOATS or Double Shield. It creates this weird issue where the better that you get at a hero, the better you are, the less control you end up having over your games. This of course doesn't apply to every hero, especially ones that are meta like Sojourn, but if you're playing an off-meta hero, you just end up climbing only to feel like you're really coin flipping at one point. This is a recurring problem that drives away players season after season, and it's why constant balancing is going to be a necessity in Overwatch 2. Simply put, Overwatch 2 is and always will be a game that is very different at the top, and it also just so happens that the majority of the creator base is playing near this level. This is not to say that there aren't streamers under Diamond, it's just that these streamers tend to not be sticking around for very long, or are more so personality streamers. This obviously will not translate to longevity, as these people will go on to play the next big title that releases, or they'll hash up some old classics for the nostalgia factor when they get bored of Overwatch. So going back to that high level creator base, a lot of them lose touch with what is present at lower ranks and how different the game can be at each division of play. A hero like Sojourn has as close to a 100% pick rate in high rank Overwatch as you can possibly get due to her extremely versatile kit, which disproportionately rewards skilled players, meaning that even though she is a must pick at these high ranks, she can absolutely be a feed pick in the lower ones. So why bring all of this up? Well, it's important because these high-ranked players typically have to deal with the most rigid part of the game, where heroes are essentially must-picks and others are avoids. This causes lots of frustrations in this community and could lead to an uneven amount of negativity coming out about Overwatch 2, since these players are experiencing a much more in-the-box version of the game, and since this is where the majority of the bigger creators are, we get a very skewed public vision. Either the only points being made are the same negative ones that are present within every content creator, or their communities echoing it because they rely on their creator to be the reliable sources of information. This is why it's important to remember that there is a very strong casually competitive, meaning those who enjoy trying to win but do not sink the same hours as a pro might, player base that play and enjoy the game. And even worse, as the game continues carrying on, the viewership will continue to drop, which will result in even more fatigue for the creators, who are going to be the most vocal minority because they have the platform to speak from. Ultimately, there is a simple truth with Overwatch 2 that was present all the same in Overwatch 1 and will forever be the case with a game like it. It is simply not a viewer-friendly game. There's a few reasons why this is, including some of the stuff we already went through before, but let's provide the evidence first. Esports viewership is generally a good way to gauge the viewer excitement level of a game. When you see a game that has a steady flow of key moments where players can make or break and take control of the match entirely, you'll generally see mainstays in esports. CSGO is the easiest comparison and the most rooted titan of the FPS esports industry out there. It is over a decade old now, and yet in 2022 had a major tournament that pulled in 550,000 average viewers with a peak of 1.5 million. These are numbers which Overwatch or Overwatch 2 has never seen, even at its best during the 2018 inaugural season of Overwatch League, which saw a comparatively meager 140,000 average view count with a peak of only 440,000. As I mentioned before, this is simply down to the pacing of the game. CSGO is very slow and tense, as the players feel out their opponents and the defenses they have set up to look for an advantage. This gives a much needed rise of tension to the moment, and due to how the game functions, all the players are on even footing. There is no tank, there's no DPS, there are just 5 players who fill different strategic roles, but mechanically all have the same options. This means that one player can suddenly swing the entire match, making an outplay that catches 2 to 3 opponents off guard and can suddenly turn around, which has potentially grave consequences for those on the receiving end. These players then have to scramble to get their advantage back or to avoid losing entirely, which creates really exciting moments for the audience on both sides. But in Overwatch, you end up taking 5 very different pieces, all of whom have different capabilities, and meshing them together to try to create an ultra-cohesive team. This means that from the point of view of the viewer, much of the nuance and strategy will just go over their heads of those who are simply trying to casually watch and be in awe of what the top can accomplish. And they'll often find themselves disappointed, since the odds of winning something like a 3 vs 1 in Overwatch are so slim that it rarely ever happens. So most of the time, whoever has the better core team is generally just gonna win. Add this into the sometimes stale and super niche high-level metas that I brought up before that are not present at the lower levels, such as the previously mentioned Sojourn, and you have a recipe for something that's just uninspiring. There's no connection between someone who is in silver or gold and an Overwatch League player. There's not even mechanics that you can really truly enjoy because it's more about the team. Which means that as far as creators go, you simply cannot get away with just being good. You also have to contribute something of value or a personality that people love, such as SQC or Emong or Flats. And the issue with this is that most of the people who do have something like this are going to end up becoming independent of Overwatch. Which leads us back to the question at hand. Is Overwatch 2 dying? My answer, no, it isn't. It certainly has dropped in view count over the last months, but the community is still as engaged as ever. With constant posting and talking about Overwatch, new people meeting other new people every day, and a host of content slating to come going forward, I think the game is thriving at the moment. There wasn't enough time to cover other topics like the questionable rank system, the bugs that have been ever present so far, heroes straight up getting removed, the effects of the extremely long queue times on viewership, or the various other questionable decisions that have been made. But you simply cannot say that this version of Overwatch was worse than the double shield days, which saw an all-time low player count. I love Overwatch, as do millions of others, and I think that a little bit of faith can go a long way, because today's version of the game still at least looks better than the days of old. I hope you all enjoyed. Please take care and peace. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today.